She was incredibly beautiful and young, but her father suddenly sold her to a man almost 60 years old to pay off a debt. The old man was very powerful and unbelievably rich. His wealth was as big as some countries. Soon, their house was full of relatives and friends who came to congratulate them, all saying what a great and impressive match it was. But Angélique didn't feel happy at all. She was filled with anger, bitterness, and a sense of helplessness. She locked herself in the stable, letting out her frustration and crying over how unfair her life had become. Her cousin, who had grown up with her, came to comfort her. He told Angélique that aside from the man's old age, a scar on his face, and a limp, there was nothing wrong with him. He added that for a man, what mattered wasn't his looks or age, but his power and money. But Angélique didn't want to give in to fate. She begged her cousin to help her, but he said it was too late and that she had no choice but to accept it. Just as she felt completely helpless, the family's coachman suddenly showed up. The coachman had secretly loved Angélique for a long time, and now he saw his chance to tell her how he felt. He said he would take her far away to escape everything. Even though Angélique had always been close to the coachman, she only saw him as a brother. She quickly turned him down, but then an idea came to her. She thought that if she gave her virginity to the coachman, her old fiancé would reject her, and the marriage would be cancelled. To change her fate, Angélique threw herself at the coachman. The coachman, who had always admired her, couldn't resist and went along with it. But just as things were about to happen, Angélique's father suddenly showed up. Furious, her father pulled out his sword and was ready to kill the coachman for daring to disrespect him. Angélique desperately stepped in to stop her father. To save the coachman's life, she promised her father she would go through with the marriage and stop causing trouble. The coachman, though unwilling, had no choice but to leave. He gave Angélique one last sad look before running off. With no other options, Angélique got into the wedding carriage, heading toward an uncertain future. Finally, she met her future husband, Peyrac. He was almost 60 years old, with a scarred face and a limp, but he looked surprisingly lively and full of energy. To try to make him call off the wedding, Angélique listed all her flaws, but Peyrac didn't care and insisted the ceremony continue. At the wedding, Angélique refused to wear the beautiful dress Peyrac had prepared for her, hoping to make him angry enough to cancel the marriage. But Peyrac just smiled calmly, not bothered at all, and the ceremony went on. Reluctantly, Angélique went along with it, already thinking of her next plan. But Peyrac quietly told her, "No matter what you do or say, I won't get angry, and I won't cancel the marriage. So please, stop wasting your energy." Seeing that he had figured her out, Angélique stayed quiet and finished the wedding ceremony. That night, after the ceremony, Angélique quickly tried to block the bedroom door, hoping to keep Peyrac out. She lay in bed, enjoying the quiet, but then Peyrac suddenly came out of a nearby cupboard. It turned out the cupboard had a secret tunnel, one Peyrac had prepared ahead of time. Shocked, Angélique jumped out of bed and backed away, warning him not to think he could have her. Even if he forced himself on her, she said, he would never have her heart. Angélique expected a fight, but Peyrac didn't force her. Instead, he comforted her, telling her not to be afraid. He promised that as long as she didn't agree, he wouldn't touch her, not even a finger. Still, Angélique couldn't sleep all night, feeling uneasy and exhausted until morning. Since Peyrac let Angélique freely use his study, one day she decided to pass the time by reading some books. She found books about Galileo and Copernicus, which were banned because of the strict religious rules of the time. Angélique, who was very religious, asked Peyrac why he kept such forbidden books. Peyrac, who didn't believe in religion and valued freedom of thought, explained that these so-called forbidden books helped people think bigger and see the world in new ways. He even encouraged her to read them whenever she had time, saying it would be good for her. Angélique, who had been raised with the church's teachings, refused to read the books, which she believed were condemned by the church. But she didn't report Peyrac for keeping them either. What Angélique didn't expect was that Peyrac took her to a hidden gold mine, a secret he had kept from everyone. She finally understood why Peyrac always seemed to have endless money. By sharing his biggest secret with her, Peyrac showed how much he trusted her. Even though his openness didn't completely win her heart, it did touch her a little. When Peyrac saw Angélique holding a gold coin lovingly, he asked her about it. Her answer made him realize something heartbreaking. The person Angélique was searching for might be the reason she had never accepted him. That night, Peyrac quietly sent a trusted maid to find out who Angélique was looking for. After some digging, it turned out Angélique was searching for her brother, who had run away 14 years ago and hadn't been heard from since. The next day, Peyrac packed Angélique's bags, gave her plenty of gold coins, and handed her a collection of nautical maps he had kept for years. He supported her search for her brother, even saying, "I know you didn't want to marry me, and if you leave and never come back, I won't force you. I just want you to be happy." Peyrac's kindness, his gentle care, and his willingness to help her find her brother, even letting her go freely, finally softened Angélique's heart. She couldn't help but cry. She sat in the carriage, holding the nautical map tightly, dreaming about finding her brother. But suddenly, a loud explosion came from Peyrac's room. Scared, she ran out of the carriage and toward the explosion, only to find Peyrac lying on the ground, not moving. Even though her father had sold her to Peyrac to pay off a debt, Peyrac had always treated her with kindness and respect. Seeing him hurt, Angélique finally realized that the nearly 60-year-old man had slowly won her heart. For the first time, she kissed Peyrac on the forehead, and this small act gave him hope that she might love him after all. Just when Peyrac thought things were finally working out, something unexpected happened. To celebrate his survival, many of Peyrac's friends and family came to congratulate him, and he threw a big party. During the party, he got an anonymous letter saying that his wife, Angélique, was secretly meeting her lover by the fountain in the backyard. Furious, Peyrac ran to the fountain and found Angélique there with a man, talking in secret. What he didn't know was that Angélique had also gotten a letter, telling her that Peyrac was in danger. The letter asked her to meet at the fountain to find out who was behind it. Worried about Peyrac, Angélique ran to the fountain to meet the man. When Peyrac showed up, the man suddenly tried to kiss Angélique. She quickly explained, but Peyrac, too angry to listen, challenged the man to a duel. The man had planned everything so he could fight Peyrac in a fair duel and kill him. But what he didn't expect was that even though Peyrac was almost 60 and had a bad leg, he was still an amazing swordsman. In no time, Peyrac killed the man. That night, Angélique sat quietly in front of the mirror. She had never imagined Peyrac would fight a life-or-death duel for her. The duel touched her deeply, and at that moment, she couldn't deny it anymore. She had fallen in love with this older man who was willing to fight for her. She went to Peyrac to explain, but Peyrac, now calm, had already figured out it was a trap set by his enemy. Angélique finally made her decision. She would stay with Peyrac for the rest of her life. 3 months into their marriage, Angélique and Peyrac finally spent their first night together as a real couple. After that night, Angélique found the love she had been missing in a marriage that had started as a way to pay off her father's debts. Years passed quickly, and the couple, now with children, lived a peaceful and happy life. But they didn't expect that their enemies would come back with another plan to ruin them. One day, the king was traveling and decided to stop at Angélique and Peyrac's castle to rest. The sudden visit surprised and excited Angélique and Peyrac. They quickly put on their best clothes and lined up to welcome the king. The first thing the king said when he arrived was, "I've heard a little about your wealth." Peyrac, sharp as ever, realized the king wasn't just visiting. He was after Peyrac's fortune. During the banquet, the king mentioned that years of war had left the country poor. Peyrac, wanting to avoid trouble and show his loyalty, decided to share his biggest secret, the hidden gold mine. Everyone went down into the mine using an elevator, and Peyrac explained how the mine worked. He also told the king that the gold mine was his to use whenever he wanted. The king smiled, clearly pleased. But as everyone watched the gold being melted, a servant who had been paid to sabotage the elevator secretly broke it. When the king, now in control of the mine, was about to leave, the broken elevator suddenly malfunctioned. The king started to fall, but Peyrac quickly stopped the elevator with a wooden stick, saving the king's life. The king, angry and shaken, got up without saying a word and left the mine. Peyrac knew trouble was coming. The servant who sabotaged the elevator was quickly silenced. That evening, the archbishop, who had been plotting against Peyrac, made things worse by accusing him in front of the king. The paranoid king believed the archbishop and left Peyrac's castle that same night. Peyrac was arrested by the king's guards, accused of trying to kill the king and planning a rebellion. Even though he was innocent, Peyrac didn't fight back. He believed the king, whom he had always been loyal to, would eventually clear his name. The guards let him say a quick goodbye to his wife, Angélique. After his arrest, Angélique became the head of the castle, taking care of everything. She did everything she could to try to save her beloved Peyrac. Angélique tried to get help from all of Peyrac's powerful friends, but no one could help her. They all said it was the king's order, and unless the king changed his mind, there was nothing they could do. Determined to save Peyrac, Angélique left for Paris to meet the king herself. But as soon as she arrived, she realized she was being watched. She hoped to stay with a friend, but because Peyrac had been accused of trying to kill the king, no one wanted to be associated with them. After a lot of effort, she finally found a place to stay, but getting into the palace to see the king seemed almost impossible. Meanwhile, Peyrac, still in prison, signed a document promising to give 1/3 of his wealth to the king to prove his loyalty and innocence. Realizing she couldn't see the king right away, Angélique decided to hire a lawyer to defend Peyrac. But because the king himself had ordered Peyrac's arrest, no lawyer was willing to take the case. Finally, Angélique found a lawyer who had always stood for justice but had been pushed aside by the powerful. To save Peyrac, she bravely went into a small tavern to find him. But as soon as she entered, a drunk man grabbed her and pinned her against the wall. She fought back as hard as she could, but the man was too strong, and no one helped her. Luckily, a large dog with a sense of justice came to her rescue, barking and attacking the drunk man. Angélique managed to escape, and the dog's owner turned out to be the lawyer she was looking for. But to her surprise, the lawyer, who had once fought for justice, had been ruined for his honesty and was now a broken man, lost in alcohol. Seeing him like this, Angélique was disappointed and ready to leave. But the lawyer suddenly spoke to her, saying, "Your Peyrac was arrested by the king himself. In this whole country, who dares to go against the king? The only lawyer willing to take this case is probably me." The lawyer, having nothing left to lose, decided to take one last risky chance, hoping it might change his life. He agreed to take the case to clear Peyrac's name. After learning the details, he went to visit Peyrac in prison to understand what had really happened. The lawyer was skilled and managed to delay the case, even though he couldn't free Peyrac at the first trial. As soon as the trial ended, someone came to threaten the lawyer, telling him to drop the case. When the lawyer refused, they offered him a lot of money to join their side. But the stubborn and honest lawyer said, "Even the king's orders can't go against justice. I will win this case." When the other side saw they couldn't change his mind, they left angrily. Angélique, who had been hiding nearby, saw everything. After days of trying, Angélique finally got a chance to meet the prince. With tears in her eyes, she told him about Peyrac's unfair situation, hoping the prince could help save her husband. The prince agreed to help her right away. But what Angélique didn't know was that the prince was actually the one behind the sabotage of the elevator and the attempt to kill the king. Peyrac had just become a pawn in the prince's plan to gain power. Not knowing the prince's true intentions, Angélique thought this was her chance to clear Peyrac's name. But as she and her maid left the prince's palace, the maid walking ahead was suddenly stabbed to death. Terrified, Angélique turned and ran, barely escaping with her life. She rushed to find her cousin, who worked as a guard. But when they got back to where the maid had been killed, the body was gone. Realizing how dangerous things were, Angélique knew she had to leave the city or risk her life. She begged her cousin to help her escape, and they planned to leave that night. On their way out of the city, a masked man suddenly jumped onto their carriage and killed the coachman. At the same time, several assassins surrounded the carriage. Knowing they were outnumbered, Angélique's cousin bravely stepped out with his sword, and Angélique hid behind him. Just then, a rogue adventurer appeared and joined the fight to help them. In the chaos, Angélique managed to escape, but two assassins chased her closely. Angélique ran until she reached a dead end. The two assassins, seeing how beautiful she was, decided not to kill her right away. Instead, they pinned her to the ground and tried to assault her. Angélique struggled and cried for help, but no one was around. Just as she was about to give up, her cousin and the rogue adventurer showed up just in time and saved her. Her cousin tried to give the adventurer a bag of coins as thanks, but the adventurer refused. His voice sounded strangely familiar to Angélique, leaving her with a weird feeling. Back home, Angélique was so angry and determined that she cut off her long hair, dyed it black, and changed her appearance completely. She wanted to avoid being recognized by the assassins who were still after her. The honest lawyer found her a safe place to hide and even bribed the prison guards to let Angélique visit Peyrac. After several days, Angélique finally saw Peyrac again, who had been tortured and looked nothing like his old self. Heartbroken, Angélique ran into his arms. Peyrac begged her to leave Paris and not risk her life for him, but Angélique refused. She insisted on staying and sharing his fate. After thinking carefully, Peyrac finally figured out the truth. The prince and the archbishop were the ones behind his wrongful imprisonment. To prove Peyrac's innocence and save him, Angélique and her cousin decided to sneak into the archbishop's house at night to find evidence. It was dangerous and they almost got caught, but they managed to find a letter in the archbishop's study. The letter revealed the prince and the archbishop's plan to kill the king and blame Peyrac for it. They showed the letter to the messenger who had earlier tried to convince them to obey the king. The messenger realized how serious this was and helped Angélique, disguised as a maid, get into the royal palace. Finally, Angélique had the chance to tell the king about the injustice Peyrac was facing. She explained everything and handed over the letter she had worked so hard to find. The king read the letter and was furious. He turned to look at the prince, his younger brother, who immediately looked guilty and couldn't meet his eyes. But Angélique didn't expect what happened next. The king, who had just become king and felt insecure about his rule, didn't want the government to fall into chaos because of the letter. Out of love for his brother, he couldn't bring himself to punish the prince. Instead, he declared the letter a fake and burned it to ashes. Seeing this, the prince bowed deeply, grateful to the king. But the king's next words crushed Angélique's hopes. The king said, "No matter what, your lover must be punished." Angélique couldn't believe the king would sacrifice her husband's life to protect his own power. She screamed and begged, but it was no use. In the end, Angélique could only watch as Peyrac was sentenced to death by burning at the stake for trying to kill the king and planning a rebellion. The next day, Peyrac would be taken to the town square and burned alive, his body turned to ashes. Every word from the judge felt like a knife stabbing Angélique's heart. The lawyer who had been defending Peyrac was so angry at the unfair verdict that he was arrested for causing trouble in court. In her despair, Angélique decided to take one last risk. She went to a dangerous place full of thieves, bandits, and criminals. She walked into the crowd of outlaws, hoping they would help her rescue Peyrac. In return, she promised to share the huge amount of gold hidden in Peyrac's castle, the fortune he had spent his life building. News of Peyrac's arrest had spread all over Paris, and many people, tempted by the gold, volunteered to help with the prison break. To Angélique's surprise, she saw the masked adventurer who had helped her a few days earlier. When he took off his mask, she realized it was the coachman who had always secretly loved her. The coachman joined the rescue mission, not for the gold, but for Angélique. Even though she was now a wife and mother of two, his love for her had never changed. For Angélique, he was willing to risk everything, even his life. The next morning, the execution stake was set up in the town square, shining brightly under the sun. A curious crowd gathered to watch the spectacle. Led by Angélique and the coachman, the group of outlaws made their way to the prison through the sewers. They broke through the prison gates to free Peyrac, but when Angélique reached his cell, she found out he had already been taken to the square. She rushed there with the group, but by the time they arrived, Peyrac was already burning in the flames. She was too late. Angélique watched helplessly as Peyrac's body turned to ashes, while the crowd cheered, calling him a traitor who had tried to kill the king. They had no idea about the conspiracy and the injustice behind the fire. Meanwhile, the prince had ordered Angélique to be killed, wanting to get rid of her completely. To escape the prince's men, Angélique ran for her life. But a huge river blocked her path, and behind her were soldiers chasing her. After a moment of hesitation, Angélique, who couldn't swim, walked into the deep river. She would rather drown than be killed by the prince's soldiers. Step by step, she moved deeper into the water until it was about to swallow her. At that moment, all her memories with Peyrac flashed before her eyes. Their forced meeting, her angry wedding, Peyrac's gentle care, and her own attempts to avoid him. Their fights, her tears, Peyrac's life and death duel for her, and her decision to finally accept him as her husband. From hate to love, from love to commitment, and finally, Peyrac's tragic death. Their relationship had been full of struggles, and she never thought it would end like this. At that moment, she thought she would finally be with Peyrac in heaven, a place with no politics, no lies, no schemes, just pure love. But when Angélique opened her eyes again, she realized she wasn't in heaven, and the person she saw wasn't Peyrac. It was the coachman who had always loved her. It turned out that when Angélique jumped into the river, the coachman had saved her at the last moment. Not only did he save her, but he also worked with Angélique's cousin and the honest lawyer to find a drowned woman whose face was unrecognizable. They used her body to fake Angélique's death. The prince, who had been hunting Angélique, finally believed she was dead. The king took over Peyrac's castle and all his wealth. Now, under a new name and identity, Angélique lived a homeless life on the streets of Paris with her 2 children. One day, she saw the royal procession passing by. Angélique angrily told her children, "The man in that carriage is the one who killed your father. Remember this hatred. One day we will clear our names and take back everything that belongs to us."